And today on What Now, we continue with our focus on Democrats' win of 2 governorship and 1 mayoral election. Is this a referendum of President Trump, who is now blaming the outcome of the election on government shutdown, which has entered its 36th day? I am Precious Amayo. Welcome to What Now, where we discuss some key issues shaping the world. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We stay on our focus on the just concluded governorship election and mayoral election in the U.S. Now, in that election, is seen as President Donald Trump's major electoral test in his second term in office. It's been a big win for Democrats in 2 states across the U.S., in 2 states of the U.S., rather. Abigail Spanberger and Mikhail Sherrill have won their gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey. Both secured more than 56% of the vote. Democrats in Virginia, Ghazala Hashmi, will become the first Muslim woman elected statewide as lieutenant governor. In New York City, Zohran Mamdani beat Andrew Cuomo and became the first candidate to pass 1 million votes since 1969. Last year's presidential election, the Democrats disoriented over the dominant victory of President Trump and the Republicans, who scored very high. President Trump is blaming the losses on the government shutdown, and now officially the longest in history, and his absence from the ballot. Now, for a wider look into the U.S. governorship and mayoral election, Stephen Hayes, partner Govt Solutions, joins me from Washington, D.C. Good to have you join us, Mr. Hayes.
Yeah, good afternoon, Precious. Nice to be here.
So in this election, we see Democrats exceeding the expectations of most observers, and that was even before election night. I wonder what you make or what you think is responsible for this victory.
Well, I think what's most noteworthy is not that they won. They were barely favored in some cases, like New Jersey, is that the margin was far bigger than anyone expected or predicted. So I think that's very indicative of an issue that I do think that it relates to President Trump. I don't think the government shutdown was the major factor at all. Certainly it didn't hurt Democrats, but I think that generally around the country, most people feel that both houses are to blame, both Democrats, both parties, I should say, both Democrats and Republicans, although polls show that Republicans are slightly more to blame than Democrats. I think the real issues are the economy, the growing gap in this country between rich and poor, and that's underlined by the fact that the middle class and the working class votes shifted more to the Democrats than they did to the Republicans.
So in 2024, that's the presidential election, we saw Republicans were thrilled to make big inroads with Hispanic voters. But we have now seen Democrats winning back the groups that deserted them in 2024 presidential election. If it's a proof that the party is extending its appeal once again to its core supporter base?
Well, I think the Democrats still need to expand their appeal to a broader range than they have. But I think the fact that the Spanish voters have shifted back to, or Hispanic, I should say, have shifted back to the Democrats is an indication of the immigration problems. Hispanics have been especially singled out by the Republicans, by the Trump administration on immigration. And I think that that's created a real strong backlash in the Hispanic community. The Trump agenda is clearer to them than it was. What's also noteworthy, particularly as I looked at the neighborhoods in New York City, is that the Asian population has also shifted more to the Democrats as well. Again, I think the immigration issue and how Trump has handled that has been really important to the Democrats.
And let's talk about the messaging, by Democrats. It's been really unpopular. They focused on issues that probably not quite important to voters at the time. They focused on issues around abortion, and maybe immigration is quite important, but Republicans had the upper hand. Have they also done better now with messaging, especially with the younger faces in this election?
Absolutely. And I do think that the Democrats historically, over the last, when I say historically, the last 10 years, have gotten away from its base, and that is the middle class and the working class, and gone to specific issues that has less relevance to the majority of the population. So I think the messaging now is more the economy, more is affordability, and certainly that was the case in both New Jersey and New York. The housing has become less affordable to the majority of people. We have a case now in the United States where less than half the population are in homes that they own. That's the first time since the Great Depression. So I think that the affordability, the economy are the two major issues right now. And I think how the administration, the Trump administration, has handled immigration is a bigger factor than most people realize. New York City, particularly, is a city of immigrants. That's been the immigration base, so that's going to affect. And I think how they've handled immigrants has also been a factor. Certainly, it was a factor in California, and that was an important election as well.
But President Trump is saying the victory for Democrats is because he is not on the ballot. But I'm wondering what this say about the direction he's taking the Republican Party.
Well, I think he was on the ballot, whether he realizes that, whether he wants to admit that or not. I think that how the Trump administration has handled America has affected people. The overwhelming majority of the United States, 69%, which includes a lot of Republicans, you can't have that feel that the country's going in the wrong direction. So that is a statement on how the Trump administration is handling things. It's not, he was clearly on the ballot. I think that affected the margins a lot as well.
But the question is whether Republicans can now hold together the coalition of voters that propelled Donald Trump to the White House. Again, you say he was on the ballot, but physically, his name will not be on the ballot in the midterm elections, and then 2020, that would be 2026 election midterms. So again, can the Republicans hold together that coalition, the MAGA base?
Well, it depends. I'd like to, especially when I talk about the MAGA base, but it also depends. It depends on how well the administration does in 2026 by 2026 in the elections. Then that he will be on the ballot. The administration and the leadership is going to be on the ballot. That's not literally, of course, but how the country feels about Republican leadership, Republican congressmen is going to be a factor. And this is also why the Republicans are working so hard to change the gerrymandering, the district, realign the districts in what normally is done every 10 years. They're trying to do now in several states, and that's the California backlash. The MAGA base is interesting because the MAGA base has been largely working class. And I think that some of that base, there is in some ways between the progressives and the MAGA base, not a lot of difference in the sense that both are concerned about how the working class is being treated. So I think that the MAGA base will be affected somewhat over the next year or two. And again, it depends on how the Republicans deal with that base in the next year. Will they try to divide the country continually? Or will they try to look at affordability for all? If they can make the economy more affordable for all, including the working class, then perhaps they can hold their base. But their base really is 28% of the country. That's been a consistent group that no matter what happens, will back Trump. But can they expand that beyond, again, to what they've had traditionally? I don't know. And I have, under the present circumstances and seeing this election, which you can't put too much on it because they are primarily Democratic areas that were up for election, but still the margin is very indicative of change.
Mr. Hayes, I will put you on hold. We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us, everyone.
Sure.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked, and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move weigh in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
And thanks for staying with us, everyone. We've been looking at the election held in the U.S. that just concluded, where Democrats swept every state and mayoral election that was held, but 2 states and then mayoral election. It's a big win for them, and that's now making it look like this is a referendum of President Trump. We've been speaking with a partner, Gainful Solutions. Stephen Hayes is still standing by for us. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Certainly.
So you would know better than me, because you're American, that unlike most countries where all politics is local, for America, politics is highly nationalized. This means that results in local and state elections are often heavily influenced by how voters feel about the national political situation. Could this extend to the midterm elections?
Well, I think still in the United States, most elections are local, and most politicians will still say that they are local. It depends on the quality of the candidates that are fielded, and also the quality of the opposition too, as well. So to that extent, I think all election is local. But given what's happening in this country, the growing gap between rich and poor, the affordability of housing, which has gone down. I should say the affordability the availability of affordability has gone down. That has become more a national issue. Also, as I pointed out earlier, the 69% of the country that feels we're going in the wrong direction is a big statement of a more than just party politics, but a concern of where the country is going. And I think that there's a whole question of values and so forth, of what this country once represented and no longer necessarily represents internationally. So I think there's a growing concern. How that's going to be translated in 2026 will be dependent on really how the economy goes over the next year, as well as how I think citizens of all ilk are treated.
I want to talk about New York, which perhaps is the biggest victory here. He's become a force. Mamdani has become a force in the Democratic Party. President Trump's outright criticism of Mamdani and his support for Andrew Cuomo, did that any way help Mamdani in claiming this victory?
Well, I think it helped Mamdani for sure. I think there's also, nationally, there's a growing resentment against the establishment, and I think that's partly what I meant also earlier about the progressives and MAGA having something in common, is that their support has been more an anti-establishment vote. Cuomo represented the establishment. Trump's endorsing a person in New York City was certainly, I think, counterproductive. I don't necessarily think it took too many votes away from Mamdani. I think it drove a lot of people towards him. But I think in any circumstances, he would have won by a sizable margin in any case. And the fact that he did by at least 10% and they had a majority over all parties is really indicative of the need for change in the issues that he promoted. He promoted centrist issues. The affordability of housing, the free education, the transportation, a free bus system for New York City. All those were winning points in the city.
I want to get to Mamdani's politics in a moment, but Trump did not even support his own candidate, of the Republican Party. He supported a Democrat who left because he lost the primaries and ran as independent. I mean, is that some sort of, can we use that scenario to sort of look into 2026 as how, to see how he's going to support candidates, probably those he believes can beat Democrats, whether they're Republicans or independents?
Well, your point is interesting, and I think correct that Trump likes to be with a winner. He saw the Republican had absolutely no chance in New York City and hasn't had for a very long time since I think John Lindsay was mayor in 1970s. So I think that he definitely wanted a defeat of Madani, and so he was going to support Andrew Cuomo, they've been bitter rivals at times, but also Cuomo is far more establishment, financial system supported, Wall Street type that Trump is comfortable with. So I think that it's not surprising that he supported Cuomo, but I think it was a poor decision.
And let's talk about Mamdani himself. He's quite now, he's very visible now in the Democratic Party. But again, he's progressive, and it comes in the like of Senator Bernie Sanders, who never got a chance to become the Democratic presidential candidate because of his politics. And I'm wondering if that could also be a challenge for Mamdani if the Democratic Party would be able to, are willing rather, to accommodate that brand of politics.
I think on that, I think that Bernie Sanders was also undermined by his own party, as I think you know well too. So it would have been interesting if he had been the national candidate as to what would have happened. I think that Mamdani will have a problem because of his progressive politics from the more establishment that has run countries and cities in the past. And I think it's going to take an exceptional wisdom on his part to be able to make the deals with the financial establishment, which really controls New York City, and not to be seen so much as anti-establishment as pro people and middle class. And I think that he's played that very, very well, because I think he's also been very sincere in that. So I think it is going to be a challenge. It is going to be difficult because there will be an establishment that is going to be concerned about losing power, and I think that's the struggle, and I think he's also going to be labeled as progressive as opposed to pro people overall. And I think we've got to, in this country, reduce the meaning of labels and really look at the substance of policy.
And interesting you mentioned that, because Wall Street is already raising concerns over Mamdani's politics. But I wanted to stay on, Trump's threat to Mamdani, which is that he will cut funding to New York if Mamdani wins. And now that he has won, Trump tweeted and he said, quote, "and so it begins." Cutting funding to New York, would that be a presidential overreach?
Yeah, of course it's an overreach, and we know that Trump is quite capable of that. He's vindictive. I think that's a fairly objective statement, fairly obvious to anyone. And I think that he will do anything he can to undermine Mamdani, and that's going to be a problem. And how Mamdani handles that will determine the success, I think, of his mayoralty. But it is overreach. Shows that the man is not supportive of the entire country, but in fact divisive. And I think that's going to be a real problem for New York City, and I think it's a real problem for the country. And I think the Republican Party is beginning to understand that message, and I hope that we'll see more independent thinking Republicans over the next year. I think we will.
What options are available to Mamdani if President Trump were to go through with that threat?
Well, the options his options are limited. He's going to have to play it very well, be a leader, which I think he is. He's showing leadership. He's going to have to expose what's going on at times. I think the electorate of New York City, having lived there for 10 years, I think is fairly well informed, better educated than a lot of places in America. And I think that as long as he can relate to the people and relate the concerns out there, he's going to have a chance to have an effective city. But the establishment, anything that threatens the status quo, will be concerned, i.e. Wall Street will be concerned, and it's going to make life difficult. But again, he's got a very strong percentage of the population behind him. And also they do read, they do understand, and so we'll see how it goes. But New York ultimately is too important to the U.S. economy as well, even though it's seen as a country and to itself by the rest of the country often. That I think that it will be wise to support New York as much as possible.
Absolutely. We will see how it goes, especially with the shutdown, which has now entered its 36th day, the longest in U.S. history. Always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for talking to us. Partner Gainful Solutions, Stephen Hayes.
Thank you, and always an honor as well. Thank you.